Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Överschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
Bem-vindos and welcome to part 2 of the Eurovision special with Paulo Mendes-Jorge. For this part, we're going to be talking about his underrated picks from Eurovision throughout the years. So if you haven't yet listened to the first part, we actually recommend starting with that one. Will the chat be as dirty as the first one? Who knows? You'll have to listen to find out, and I'll be back at the end to talk about where you can reach us. Ciao!
Underrated.
So do we get to the underrated now?
Yes,
or?
underrated. So what
Underrated.
motivated you to pick these specific songs? What was the criteria?
Well, as I said before, I think we listen to a song or we take in a song, a table, a book, whatever. We take it in with our software. And so these songs are songs for a reason that must tick a lot of boxes at my subconscious level. I think it's, as I said in the beginning, melody is king for me. So I would say that all of them have melodies that I like. But in some others, in some other instances, it may be the content. It may be the elegance of the delivery. It may be the style, the sheer style. So I don't have a simple answer for that.
Okay, so let's get into it then. What's your first pick?
Okay, so the first pick, because we are now doing it in chronological order from my list, is 1958, Domenico Modugno, which the song is called Nel blu dipinto di blu, which means in the blue, painted blue, but it's known as volare, to fly, because it begins, as everybody knows, with volare, and so on. I think it's my question is almost, is it really underrated? Because it's one of the all-time success stories from Eurovision. Why did I put it as underrated? Because the winning song from that year, nobody ever remembers. I had to go and listen to it. It's by a guy called André Claveau, which was a big star, must have been a big star in the days, because I have shellac records with some of his songs. I have a shellac record collection, and André Claveau figures there quite strongly. So until the mid 50s, but I had never heard the winning song. Whereas Volare, as it is known, is a classic. Is a classic, very successful song. The melody is very catchy, but it's not as simple as it sounds. If you just try to sing it, you will realize how relatively difficult, how not so simple it is. The lyrics are lovely. Also, it's about elation. It's about being in love. And then there's the blue in the sky and the blue in her eyes and so on. But very nice lyrics. And I think it didn't win because, same as I was saying, for nowadays, let's call it political voting or neighbor voting, benefits maybe ex-Yugoslavia and former Soviet republics. Back in the day, there were 5 countries who were either French-speaking or had French as one of their languages, like Luxembourg. So France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and Monaco all have French as either as the language or one of the national languages. And we're talking about Eurovision Song Contest with 12 to 15 entries. So that's a very large amount, and people had to sing in their own language. So of course, if you hear something in a language that is either your mother tongue or an official language of your country, it's going to stick with you a bit more. And in those days, in addition to let's say the French language club, something which the Portuguese were always commenting about, because of course we were outsiders, were the Scandinavians. They were always voting for each other. Again, they don't speak the same language, but they're from the same cultural area, and they understand each other's languages. And there are 3 countries, 3 Scandinavian countries, and if you include Finland, with the Nordics, it's 4, although Finnish In terms of language, it doesn't work that way. So it was much more difficult in the day for someone like an Italian, where Italian is spoken in Italy and in a small part of Switzerland. It's different from speaking French. And I think for the same reason, the UK and Spain and Portugal were also disadvantaged in that sense. Not so many people did understand. In the case of Portugal and Spain, we'll get there later, but there was also a political element to it because both of them were dictatorships at the time. If all of this had not been the reality back then, I think Volare, I would say Volare would have won the day. But it's a fantastic song. But luckily, even though it maybe was not rewarded as it could or should have been, it's been a big success nevertheless. And I will give my score already 12 points.
Yeah. When it started, I had no idea. When as soon as the chorus hit, I thought, oh, here we go. Because I swear they sing this in football stadiums.
They do.
And I think that's why I knew it. And has it been covered by modern artists as well?
Frank Zappa, Paul McCartney, David Bowie.
There we go. And apparently it won a Grammy and it sold like 20 million singles. So although it didn't win, it's probably the most successful Eurovision song of all time. Yeah, I think it's a great song. It's also got a bit more of a performance than other people of that era. Like he's like, he's going full Italian. And yeah, I quite enjoyed it. So I'd probably give it a 10.
Yeah, I mean, I love this song. I mean, I knew this song and I forget frequently that it comes from Eurovision because I feel like it's just something in the cultural space that's always been there. I can't believe it didn't win. And then I was even like, am I going to go and bother and listen to the first two? And I was like, well, probably not because they're not going to be as good. I'd never paid attention to the lyrics and they are beautiful when I put them into Google Translate. His performance, honestly, okay, I've worked a lot this week and I was doing the research, drinking a glass of red. It made me cry. It actually made, I think because with music, it can happen with me and I just cry and I'm like, what is going on? But I think having looked at the lyrics, then seeing it, and it was so authentic. It felt like he was really feeling it, and the orchestra, it was beautiful. So yeah, absolutely 12 points from me. But I didn't know that so many people had covered it until I went on the Wikipedia page. And when you go on the Wikipedia page of cover versions, it's like it could almost be its own section. And yeah, and he's a really interesting guy. So he suffered a stroke, which partially paralyzed him, and that forced him to kind of abandon his artistic career. He went to rehab. So from 1986, he worked for the rights of disabled people. He was elected congressman for Turin in Italian parliament. And towards the end of his life, he was fighting for the rights of people in a psychiatric hospital close to where he lived. So, absolutely 12 points from me, especially because, I knew this song so well. I think I'd seen the images of him performing it, like him in the suit and the moustache. It was familiar to me, but I think because I listened to the studio version, went to look at the lyrics, and then saw the performance, it really unexpectedly moved me. So yeah, 12 points from me.
And there's still time for Scoots to become political powerhouses.
Come on, Scooch, and not for the Brexit Party or whatever.
Yeah, I think like I said, because in those days it's such a sterile performance. Just seeing someone move their arms kind of gave it more gravitas, doesn't it? Really? Yeah,
it was really because he starts flying and then it cuts to the orchestra, and I was just like, oh, this is so. Again, red wine also, but still, like it was moving.
But yeah, I think it was a whole different thing. I feel particularly until '74 when ABBA started to make a bit of a different show of it altogether again. Until I would say at least the late 70s, the Eurovision finale would be attended by the prime minister or the president or whoever of the country. It was really a very serious affair, and that's why countries invested and invest so much in it, and why there is so much pride in winning and so much sadness in losing or getting your nul point. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I keep going back to it, but because that's all we have. But when the year that Salvador Sobral won for Portugal, I remember before Eurovision, I was in Portugal having a coffee with a friend, And I was talking to her about it because I'm a fan. And she said to me, like, Barbara, just Portuguese people aren't really into Eurovision. Well, that has changed. Let me tell you, that has changed, because I know that the year after it was amazing. So yeah, so I went to Austria 2015 and Lisbon 2018, and it was absolutely incredible to be in, my home city. It's a vibe, because in both of the ones that we went to, you have this kind of stage area where basically for the whole time you have concerts of all sorts. Like sometimes it's old winners, sometimes it's kind of local musicians, and then you have like pop-up spaces across the city. So it really felt like the whole city was living it. And it's like now definitely Portuguese people watch Eurovision, even now that a few years have passed since then.
Speaking of Portugal,
that's exactly what I was going to say. Nice.
Which I will introduce my second underrated song from 1966. Madalena Iglesias, Ele e Ela, meaning he and her, or he and she. Why do I have it as underrated? Well, it's a very fresh and modern song for the time, I would say. And I think particularly it would have already been, I think, an interesting, maybe even remarkable song from a big powerhouse like the UK or Italy or France in those days. But the fact that something like this came from Portugal, for me, is even more remarkable, because Portugal in the 1960s was a country with a lot of poverty, dictatorship, provincialism. If you only need to look at the first Portuguese entry into Eurovision 1 or 2 years before,
it was so bad. Oh my God. And it was about God or something, wasn't it?
The
was so bad.
The song is called Prayer. Oração means prayer. And it's just, that is a reflection of the Portugal of those days. To have something fresh and breezy like this was really, I think, quite remarkable. And the other reason why I like the song is that, unlike the lyrics in Vicky Leandro's song in 1972, this is what I would call tongue-in-cheek, a sort of girl power song before its day, because the lyrics are about a guy who is absolutely besotted with the girl he loves. And the closing verse says, he without her is nobody. That's the gist of the song. So it's a song I very much like, was very popular in the country at the time. I think it came 13 out of 17. And I think I already mentioned when discussing the previous song, the language club issue. I think in the case of Portugal and Spain, it was even worse, because we were a dictatorship with a colonial war going on. That reflected naturally in the very political nature and the very political voting of Eurovision. But a very nice song with that.
I don't know how well you remember the program Thunderbirds or Stingray. Have they shown ever, Paolo?
You must remember I remember Thunderbirds.
So this reminds me of the music in those shows. It's kind of like almost James Bond. It's a lot of like brass, like dun 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 dun, and so I enjoy that bit. It's not my favorite melody, but I asked about the lyrics because I noticed that her voice is very controlled, and she can really sort of roar and then go very, very quiet. And I was interested to know why she was going more hushed at what, obviously, without knowing what she's talking about, it's hard to work out why she changes how she sings throughout the song.
She goes very more up when she's talking about his enthusiasm for the girl. And one of the times when she goes really very low is when there's a line which says, she appeared. She appeared and her beauty, blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the points of the song where she goes with a lower voice. But she's an excellent interpreter. She can do a very throaty voice. And in fact, Barbara's late mother did a fantastic impersonation of Madalena Iglesias with a very low voice.
I'm sad to miss it.
And we have one because I also have a lot of vinyl singles, and we have in fact the record from Madalena Iglesias with the song where Barbara's mother did the impersonation of. I'll have to show it to her when she visits next time.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't actually love the song. I enjoyed her performance. I enjoyed the music behind it. So I just give it a 7 out of 12. Sorry to hurt Portugal.
You're entitled. You're entitled. Yeah, I didn't know this at all, despite it being a Portuguese Eurovision song that you liked. I thought it was quite catchy and sweet. I do think the lyrics elevate it for sure. Because yeah, so as Paulo was saying, it's a story. It starts with her saying he's a good boy, which I imagine it as being he's someone who's very straight-laced, trying to do the right thing in life, and suddenly this woman appears and wow, his life has shifted and now it's amazing. And yeah, he gives everything to this woman, and at the end he is nothing without her. I really loved her cheekiness, her eyebrows, her in the fact that she was kind of side on to the stage. I thought was quite interesting, and I really enjoyed for the Portuguese speakers when she says "Ele é bom rapaz," which means he's a good boy. She literally goes like this, which I feel very Southern European. I'm doing the Italian hands probably more known, but she goes "Ele é bom rapaz," and she's really emphasizing it, which I personally enjoyed. Again, not maybe the kind of thing I would listen to on a playlist, but yeah, I would say 6 out of 12. Yeah, and I wondered how big it had been in Portugal.
I think it was quite big in Portugal. Yeah. But this was not an unknown person in Portugal. She was one of the two pop divas.
Big ladies.
In fact, there was quite a nice play, even though the play was not necessarily about her. There was a play in the 1990s, I think, and the play's name was in English. It was a Portuguese play, but the title was in English, and it was "What Happened to Madalena Iglesias."
Like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I'm getting educated. Everyone's getting educated. But yeah, let's move on to the country next door, maybe.
Yeah, no, the country next door. I mean, so we're now in the song. The underrated song is "Quien Maneja Mi Barca" by Remedios Amaya from Spain, 1983. It came 19 last. And not only did it come last, it came 19 at nul point. It's one of the nul point songs from Eurovision, and I think it's of course. It helps if you understand the language. But in this case, even if you don't understand the language, the body language and the mood of the song say a lot. And I think they convey the sense of the song. "Quien maneja mi barca" as a question is who is driving my boat, if I can put it that way. And it's about, I think the interpretation, it's beguiling, magnetic, it's more than flamenco, not like, I like flamenco, I have to say, not that I'm listening to flamenco the whole time, but I like flamenco, but this is something else. This is it's quite a modern interpretation. Yeah, as I said, it's harder to appreciate it if you don't understand the language, but the mood says it all. I think people didn't get it, or maybe you need to have a certain cultural makeup to be able to appreciate it, maybe. And Portugal is not very far away, either geographically or culturally. But she said in an interview that things didn't go very well. She said she felt looked down. I actually listened to an interview from her many, many years later. It's quite an interesting and a sweet character, particularly also in her young years. And she said she wasn't going well because she felt a little bit looked down upon. And I think it was virtually on the day of the performance or very shortly before, she was rudely told that she couldn't wear the dress that she had prepared, which she loved and which was part of the performance, because the stage was black and the dress was black, and so she wouldn't be. People couldn't see her properly. And she was told, apparently in very bad manners, that no, she couldn't wear that dress. And she was apparently very upset by this. And her barefoot performance was not something that happened by design. Was that she was so upset, didn't even want to think about shoes or whatever. She decided she would go barefoot. She told her entourage, just don't talk to me, leave me to myself. And so she went in with all this pressure. And then I think when I listened to a program on Spanish television now, preparing for the podcast, I think it was really a shock for Spain, because I think in Portugal we were always used to getting very low scores. Spain had already won a few times by the time this happened. I think it was really, really very a very, very big shock. I think the song was chosen, and we were talking about a little bit earlier about how songs are chosen in different countries. I think it varies. In this case, apparently there were some young or new executives at Spanish television who said that, look, we don't have to go there to Eurovision trying to act like a Eurovision song. We just have to show what we do and the way that we do and the best that we do. And that was apparently the idea behind choosing this song at this stage. But clearly it didn't work. Was it ahead of its time? Maybe people didn't get it. Maybe nowadays, with people traveling a lot more and knowing a little bit more about other cultures, it would have been treated differently. Some people said that it was better that it lost with no points than if it had lost with a few points, because that made it a little bit more honorable. But I think it's a great injustice of Eurovision. But I'm interested to know, and I know because Barbara has told me that she didn't know this song and she apparently likes it.
I have been texting Paulo, I'm sorry, Fran, in advance, saying, how have I only just heard of this? But yes.
But I think it's interesting to know, because Fran is from Northern Europe, from a completely different musical culture. I think it's interesting to know what both of you think.
Fran, what did you think?
Okay, I'll start positive and say that I enjoyed the headband. I missed that rolled up headband look you get in the 80s. Yeah, dress wasn't great, so maybe that's why. It all makes sense. I prefer the recorded version to her performance. And now you said that, maybe her performance lacked something because of the pressure she had from the German production crew. Yeah, it's a singing style that doesn't sit too well with me. I struggled to find the melody. It seems to be sort of like constantly changing, and I couldn't sort of find a particular melody that I enjoyed. Also, regarding performance, I noticed that she points all the time. And if you've learned something from Tony Blair, you should never point. You should always do the knuckle, or it looks like you're telling somebody off. So I don't think that went with her somehow. So I was going to give her nil point. I apologize.
What? Okay.
It's injustice repeated. We can understand.
Okay, I think this might be the one song across our podcast where we have the most differing opinion. What an injustice. This song is amazing. I cannot believe, Paulo, that you and Lucia liked this song, and I never heard it until today. Until yesterday when I was preparing for it. I absolutely love the mix of flamenco and synth pop, basically. But I have to say that this is the one where I was the most glad to listen to the studio version before I saw the performance. So studio version comes on, I was like, what is going on here? Because in the studio version, you can really hear the synths, you can really hear the bass. There's a whole soundscape, and there's even vocoders, whereas in Eurovision, it's live drums, brass, and woodwind. And I don't think it has the same impact. Like, it really, the bass, Fran, it's Duran-Duran-esque. Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, I saw the live performance twice, and then just before I came on, I then heard the studio version. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going by her performance on that night, I did not enjoy that performance.
But yeah, I have honestly been listening to it all day long. I think it's incredible. I'm someone who very much appreciates the genre mashup, and flamenco, my mum used to play the classical guitar, so she played a few flamenco things. So I think there is a bit of that. Of it is something that I grew up with a little bit, so it's not completely unfamiliar to me. But flamenco normally is something that I wouldn't normally seek out. Although Rosalia being so popular now and bringing flamenco also into the kind of real mainstream, she's huge. It had already opened my mind up a bit more to like, yeah, flamenco maybe is something I would like and get into. Now I'm like, let's go, Remedios Amaya. I want to go and listen to everything. And yeah, I would listen to Turu Turai, which is her biggest song according to Spotify. Love that. I think, yeah, her performance, it makes sense what you say, Paulo, that there's a reluctance in it. So I would like to give this 12,000 points. Thank you very much. I cannot believe you deprived me of this until 2021.
I'm interested to know what Spain did the next year. Did they go back on their laurels and go to something more Eurovision after failing miserably with being Spanish, I wonder?
But I mean, what actually on that, I would not have guessed immediately was flamenco. I thought it was Arabic almost when she started singing, because I have to say, even with the lyrics in front of me, listening, it's almost difficult to understand what she's singing is what she's saying. And yeah, Wikipedia says this song fused Spain's Arabic, Andalusian, Sephardic and Gypsy heritage with contemporary Anglo-Saxon pop and rock. So yeah, I guess even for Spain it's out there, right?
But it is like some of the other songs we've been discussing. It gets to you more if you know the language, even if the lyrics are very, very simple.
But to me, I had no idea what the hell she was saying apart from being on a boat.
I think this is the one who guides my boat. How do you say it in English? Who drives my boat? Who sails my boat?
Well, it's like, yeah.
The one who
depends if it's a speedboat or
the one who commands. the one who or the captain of my boat takes me drifting.
But honestly,
almost takes me drifting. That's one of the thing. And the other one is, no matter how much you ask me, I will not go there. And that's the end of the line.
I had no idea what she was saying, and it still made an impact on me. So I think if you like that kind of thing, you can still like it without knowing the lyrics. So I'm guessing, given it's nul point, Fran, you're not motivated to perhaps seek out a flamenco concert in your local area to see if you change your mind.
I admire the dexterity of playing a flamenco guitar, but it's not on my top of my list to get into. Moving on to Italia.
Alice e Franco Battiato, in fact, I Treni di Toser, Italy, who came in at number 5 in 1984. Why did I put it here? Well, it came in at number 5. For me, it could have come in at number 1. Digiloo Digilei came in at number 1. I also like Digiloo Digilei, but
doesn't sound good. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't sound good.
I Treni di Toser is a very slick and sophisticated productions. The voicing, I have to say, like in this one, same as in the other ones, I only listened to the performance at Eurovision evening because that's what I remembered. I went back to what I remembered having watched originally, and in a couple of instances, the voicing goes from him to her, and they just fuse. It's very, very nice. In addition to the songs being so smooth, really. The opera singing at the end is a little bit Eurovision-y, but it adds to a relatively unusual signature. And I think the orchestration renders the rolling rhythm of the train and the feeling of the train really beautifully. You can really understand that this is a song about a train. And it was a success in many countries, apparently, despite coming in at number 5. Was it too sophisticated for Eurovision? I don't know. But anyway, it was a high quality entry from Italy. And in fact, one of the things that struck me, just as a final remark, not about the song, but about Italy, is that if you listened to, as there are lists for everything on Spotify, internet, whatever, YouTube, about the Italian entries to Eurovision, the quality is remarkably high. They are very often quite unusual songs, but I would say that they are, on the whole, maybe the country coming up with the highest quality songs, the highest quality entries. And for me, certainly this one is a case in point.
For me, I heard Giorgio Moroder a little bit, fellow Italian, electro. The bass line reminds me of Radio Gaga. I guess it's a similar, but the performance is bonkers because every time Franco stops singing, he steps behind her and then looks at her like a creep. It's a really weird choice of what are you doing, mate? Yeah, so that put me off. Yeah, it's a really unique style. He reminds me of Adrian Brody from the Pianist a lot.
I was wondering which nerd it was, but yes.
Yeah, yes, that nerd.
Yeah. But a cute nerd,
And
definitely.
she's got some very interesting gloves going on from another pastime. And yeah, the opera choir, I loved it. Bring it into more guys, or more opera choir. Just give them what is the point of giving a choir one line at the end of a song? It's really strange choices. So I thought it's kind of bonkers. It felt happy, sad. Like again, I don't know what the lyrics were at the time. So yeah, I'll give it like a 9 out of 12.
Yeah, so this song I was like, oh, it's that song that Paulo listens to all the time. Like, because I recognized it from you listening to it all the time. No idea it was Eurovision, no idea anything. So I was like, again, very, very pleasantly surprised. And it was another one where I am so glad that I listened to the studio version before going to see the performance, because I'm with Fran. Like, it is weird. He is weird. Their chemistry is weird. Why is he standing behind her and just like sitting there dead faced, like, no emotion? Because I only knew this song from, never paid attention to the lyrics, might not have even guessed it was Italian from paying attention to it. Of course, Paulo, of course you pick a song about trains, you cheeky civil engineer, you. Of course. Like, there's opera, there's trains. Paulo's gonna love it. Of course. It all slots into place. But again, maybe the red wine, maybe something else, maybe because I do associate it with childhood memories of adulthood memories. When I went to read the lyrics and then saw the performance, I was quite moved as well. Like, I think it really swells and builds. And when the opera comes in, like, I on the one hand, I agree with you, Fran, like they should have employed them more. It would have been a better backing vocal, but because they come in right at the end, it kind of hits you. And I was really touched, even though I knew it was coming because I knew the song. Yeah, I would give this 12 points. Yeah, and I wrote down exactly what you said, Paolo, of gosh, Italy are good at Eurovision. Because I was thinking of more modern ones as well. Well, one of which I'll mention in the next one. But we've already mentioned Mahmood, who's, I think I would agree that
I think Italy are the most underrated country, let's say.
I feel like for once I'll be the nerdier one. I would have to go and do some analysis on that. I think I'd have to not go and listen to everything, but I'd have to do an analysis before coming to that conclusion. But
Sweden, the most successful country still.
Ireland have won 7 times.
Wins. Yeah, you're correct. 7 times.
Yeah.
And then Luxembourg 5, and they've given up, haven't they?
Yeah.
Sweden 4.
But Sweden, it's interesting that you say you went to Sweden and people didn't really seem into it, because I know Swedish people as being really obsessed with Eurovision. Yeah.
I mean, we're all in the early 20s, so I guess people in the early 20s into rock and roll and indie music aren't going to pretend to like Eurovision, I guess. Yeah.
It's not cool, is it? It's,
I would give it 10 points. Yeah.
Wow, I gave it more than you. Amazing.
I gave it 10 points. But I didn't. Did I? I would give 10 points to Spain also. I didn't give my scores to Remedios Amaya. Yeah, I would also have given that.
What would you give it, Fran?
Oh, this one here, I'll give it a 10.
Okay.
At the moment, I believe track Italian. What's it called? I can't pronounce it. The first one's the winning, isn't it?
Volare.
Yes, Volare is winning it currently.
Okay, in the Fran Babs Paulo Eurovision. Yes, great.
So is there a chance for one last song to win it?
Let's see.
Yes. And the last song in my list is a recent one, is the 2018 France, Merci. Or should it be Mercy? Which, as I've now discovered, I thought it was Merci, written the French way, thank you, with I. And when I saw it with Y, I thought, oh, someone made a spelling mistake. But no, it does say, I mean, the lyrics say it is about a baby girl born in a rescue boat, and the boat rescuing refugees in the Mediterranean. This I knew, but I didn't know. What I didn't know is that it's based on a true story. Because the authors and interpreters of the song, the duo, Madame Monsieur, by the way, Madame Monsieur, France 2018, they were taking a break from some musical work. They were on Twitter and they realized that there was a baby born to I think a Nigerian couple on the refugee rescue boat as it was approaching Italy. And when they read about this, they thought they had to reflect it in their music, and that's how the song came about, apparently. Why do I have it here? It's so cool and sophisticated. It's so far away from the wind and fire staging of Eurovision. And I think the coolness and the sophistication, because I'm referring always back to the performance on the evening, it's not just the song, but the staging, the wardrobe, their look. I think it's French savoir-faire at its best. So I quite like it. It has a strong message, of course. It carries emotion. And I found didn't bring me to tears, but I've watched the video on the final show and I found it quite moving.
I mean, and you saw this live.
And I saw it live, but I thought it was even more moving because of the way it's shot and cut. I thought it was even more moving in the video than I did watching it live. And apparently it was voted the best entry by the accredited media and press at Eurovision Lisbon. So I'm not alone in thinking this is a good song. I think it's cool. It's a very cool song with a message and a nice melody, of course.
Again, I watched the performance before I heard the studio version, and I prefer the studio version, especially the production and Babs. Remember the Girl in Red with Rue? It sounds like that. It's a very similar production to that song. So it's very modern. I guess for 2018, it's going to sound modern, isn't it? But even for Eurovision, it's quite a cool production. I remember watching this live and not loving it. So I thought it was a little bit forgettable. When you're talking about countries and their voices, I've always struggled a bit with the French language singing. Even like Christine and the Queens. I don't know why that is. I don't know if there's certain languages that you prefer. Like I enjoy listening to the Swedish language. I enjoy listening to Italian, but for some reason French, I don't know why it is, that it always kind of affects me. Maybe because I'm a massive racist, I guess.
You're British after all, right? Like they're your natural enemies, right?
No, but I guess the French has got a very. It's hard to hide French, isn't it? It's the way that they pronounce things like clicks and stuff. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe I hated French at school. But yeah. If you're talking about the studio version, I would give it an 8 out of 12. But going on their live performance, I didn't feel anything. I gave it a 6.
Yeah. So I didn't see the song live. So when I said that Paolo watched it live, I mean really live in the arena, because this was Eurovision in Lisbon that we attended. And Paolo had tickets for everything. So the rehearsals of the semi-finals, the rehearsal of the final and the final. And so me and my friend Yosha went to, I think, the first semi-final, the actual one, because Paolo and Francis, his husband, not Francis from this podcast, kindly lent us their tickets. And it was a really amazing experience. And Yosha, who was cynical, let's say, he went because he was like, yeah, sure, why not? By song 2, he was absolutely into it. So it was really fun to see. And it is a very different experience watching Eurovision live. I didn't watch this song live because it wasn't in the semi-final that I watched. But when I saw it, I was like, really? Of all the other songs, and I mean, I'll go into later some of my favorites. Why this one? I heard the studio version. It was actually the opposite to you, Fran. I listened to the studio version and I was like, okay, like it's a modern pop song, fine. And then when I watched the performance, I guess because I was watching it decontextualized from all the others, just focusing on that one, I enjoyed it much more. Again, I think in part because of the lyrics, because I didn't know that it was based on a real story, but when you look at the lyrics, it's obviously about a refugee child. And I think when you know that, you feel the emotion that they're giving.
I would concur that the lyrics are fundamental in this song to appreciate it fully.
Babs mentioned earlier that you have subtitles of the lyrics when you watch it
on BBC.
Really? I've never noticed that.
Yeah. I think you press the red button or whatever it is, but I definitely have watched it on BBC with subtitles where it's like immediately in English.
Really? Because it would help a lot if you knew what people were thinking about on half the song.
And sometimes it's amazing. Like, you go on Twitter and sometimes people will screenshot the kind of the terrible. I have to say, there were some not great lyrics, but I mean, there are some all-time clangers, which I'm sure we could do a whole episode on that. On this song, I think, I'm glad you picked it because it did change my opinion, actually, kind of going back and revisiting it by itself. But I think I went and looked at what songs had I saved from this year because I had Spotify by then, and some I'd forgotten. So the Italian one, Non mi avete fatto niente, was really good, and that was kind of like message, but not really a message because it's these two very kind of serious Italian guys taking it in turns. And when you go and look at the lyrics, it's about like, hands without hands, faces without names. Let's swap our skin. Basically, we are human. There is no pacifist bomb. You get the vibe. And I'd forgotten because I was like, what was it like on the night? As they were singing in Italian, visually they represented some of the lines in different languages, so like in Portuguese and all this kind of stuff. But that was very good. I'd saved the Ukrainian entry and I was like, well, this is a forgettable song, and that was the crazy vampire guy. I don't know if you remember him. So he starts singing the piano because I watched it again last night. He rises up and then walks down the steps and then the piano's on fire. And I was like, that it is fair enough, quite memorable. And there was the metal song, basically the melodic metal song, which I remember you hating. I thought it was okay. And Slovenia would have been, I think, maybe my underrated pick. It was this woman with pink hair, and it was a very funky pop song, where there's a little bit of rapping, there's a little bit of song, but then there is this kind of bridge where it builds, and then you're like, okay, this is classic Eurovision. So I think 2018 was a good year, but I personally would have picked something else, but I would give, on reflection, I would give the song maybe 7 points.
Maybe I would give it 8. But to me, it's in the 8 points from the 8 thereabouts. Sorry, Fran, you were going to say.
Regarding this year, is it 2020 acts carried over?
No,
really.
Oh no, hang on.
Sorry. Some of them.
I said that with
yes.
such confidence. No, I have no idea.
Some of them have carried over. I think the Dutch entry and the Macedonian entry have carried over.
I think it's not the same song. Sorry, it can't be the same song as 2020.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
so Iceland can't win it.
No,
a cool song.
Yeah,
do you remember Iceland, Paulo? It was the guy with the sweatshirts with everyone's face on it.
Yeah, I didn't particularly like it.
Everyone in the UK was going mental for it, I think, because it's a very funny song. And I know I saw Fran, the comedian Sarah Barron, talking about her husband buying them all the sweatshirts from that video, and she was like, when are we ever going to wear these? Like, for what occasion are we going to wear these sweatshirts? But yes, I'm going to say, Paulo, you surprised me. I thought this was a very savvy, I'm slagging you off. You're my dad after all. But yeah, given our background and the arguments we have had about music in the past, I thought this was going to be a lot more syrupy. There were some songs that I was really surprised that you liked. And I personally would be forever grateful for learning about Remedio Samaya, because that was that's a big surprise. I'm sure, Fran, I'm sure the praise won't be as high from you, and that's okay.
I quite enjoyed watching old Eurovisions. It's not every day I watch songs which weren't the winners. So it's nice to see what else was out there, because obviously I'm sure there's hundreds of fantastic songs that I will never see on the best of shows, and there's something terrible happens in their performance. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing here I really hated apart from that one song. But yeah, I mean, I think sadly I probably preferred more in the overrated category.
Yeah, I mean, I
category.
enjoyed the overrated category more than I would.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the overrated category too, except for Azerbaijan, I think.
Yeah.
I think
Ellen, Nikki, I hope you're okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Paulo.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a great experience. My first ever podcast. Maybe last, who knows?
Wow, okay, Jesus. Stay living, yeah?
That's all I meant.
Obviously, you don't have anything to plug because you don't have a podcast. Is there any finishing words of wisdom or any any words for someone who might have been listening to this episode who normally isn't a Eurovision fan, to try and convince them? Yeah, what would you like to end with?
I think
no pressure.
You either like pop music or you don't. I think Eurovision has been there long enough for there to be very different styles, dominant styles in different times. And what we were talking about from the 1950s or 60s is very different from the current times. But I think there's potential to like Eurovision if you like pop music. And if you don't, and if you take it, if you don't come to it already with some prejudice, really, at the end of the day, but it's not it's not everybody's cup of tea. But it's good fun. I think it's the longest surviving musical contest in the world, sort of thing. There's now a body of, I think, almost 1,600 songs from when it started, because if you go to Wikipedia, actually each song has a serial number. I think for 2019 we're in the 1560s. So there's a very large body of music there. A friend asked me about what year was my favorite. I'm not sure, but I think somewhere in the 80s, maybe 82, 83. Remedios Amaya was 83. Credit Torzer is 84, so around that time, before I more or less disconnected. For me, there is a year that is quite important, pivotal, which is 1974 with the victory of ABBA, which was, I think, when it transitioned, to use today's language, from French chanson to something a little bit more pop.
And I guess I actually hadn't made the connection, but 1974 is the year that the dictatorship ended in Portugal.
In Portugal too, and in fact there is another story, which is the Portuguese entry of 1974.
Yes,
was the first of two code songs to launch the revolution. Played on national radio at a certain time in a certain program. And the reason why it was chosen was that it was so neutral that it was not going to raise suspicions that something was going on. The second code song was another one, which is from a very well-known author, singer-songwriter, José Afonso, which is much more, I'd say, closer to a communist type song. So, E Depois do Adeus, After the Goodbye, the Portuguese entries of 1974, did play a historic role in Portugal that year. In fact, between winning the national contest and being played at Eurovision, because the revolution was in April. So by the time Eurovision took place, the revolution had already started. So there you are. We finish on a political note.
What a marvelous way to end. And Fran, do you feel, because I still haven't quite got a handle on how you really feel about Eurovision. You know, is it something that you look forward to every year? Is it something you're a bit more passive about? Has this episode changed your opinion?
Let's go back to the original idea of Eurovision being a way to unite the post-war countries in Europe. Has that happened? Are we now a closer continent because of Eurovision? Maybe not. Do I enjoy it as a spectacle? Yes. I mean, I watch it. I mean, yeah, I will sit down and watch Eurovision. Very rarely will I go away wanting to download or buy a track from Eurovision. I mean, I like pop music, but it's a certain style of pop that doesn't really suit me. But it would be lovely one day, though. And I've seen Radiohead on a chat show shake hands to say that they would do Eurovision, and that has not happened. And they shook hands with Jonathan Ross to say they will write a song for Europe about 15 years ago. And I'm still rating
I mean,
Tom
this
York.
might be a bit macabre for people who haven't gone through this, but I think my mum would literally rise from her grave to see that, because that would be amazing. Tom, can you imagine? And they could do, I mean, depending which Radiohead they went with, they could do really well. Wow.
It'd be really interesting if UK like put a massive artist like Coldplay or whatever into Eurovision and tried, would we win, or would the political world still make us?
Do you know what I think it might be? Because I actually remember my cousin sharing a meme where it was something like, you can be the best singer in the world, or you can do very well in your native country, but ultimately, if you're not singing in English, you're not going to break through. And maybe there's a bit less truth in today's world where K-pop dominates, and I think people are more open to listen. Well, the English-speaking world is more open to listening to songs not in their language. But I think it might be that, like, listen, the UK, the English-speaking world dominates in so many other areas. Let us have this one, So I think there's maybe a bit less willingness for that. And I do think the fact that the UK is in it every year, that they're not given a chance to kind of like go away with their tail between their legs and come back stronger. They know it's there. So yeah, let's roll out Engelbert Humperdinck or Bonnie Tyler or whoever it was, rather than actually thinking about it a bit more strategically. I think that does play a role.
And I'm all for us getting eliminated. We had protests last week of the European Super League getting rid of competition, and then we're getting a bye to the final in Eurovision. So, I'm happy for us to be eliminated.
Well, I would say maybe, Paolo, you wouldn't agree with that, because you would say that the UK had some good entries and has the chance to have some good entries, but
has a chance. I think their heart is not in it right now. Yeah. But it's much more difficult to, as I said, I'm repeating myself from earlier on. There are a lot more boys and girls playing now. It's not like the world of 80 years ago, 70 or 80 years ago, where there were half a dozen big players and that's it. Now it's very annoying, but you have to compete with
it's very annoying, but you have to be good. Yeah. I will finish by saying that I can understand the knee-jerk reaction against Eurovision, because I had that knee-jerk reaction once. And when you do see the roundups of Eurovision, very often it is the person with the craziest staging, makeup, whatever it is. But I will emphasize again, I mean, we didn't get into it because there's only so much time, but there are so, like you said, Fran, very few times have you gone away and kind of saved or explored a song. I think so as well. It hasn't been that many people that I could probably I could name them on one hand, but those that I got in from Eurovision, I really got into. Sébastien Tellier, was he the first French entry singing in English back in, I don't know, 2012. He is amazing, and he's one of those artists where I haven't listened to every single song. I haven't listened to every single song on his back catalogue, but I have seen him live twice, and I have cried both times. Again, with the music. And I don't think I would have gotten into him if it wasn't for Eurovision. And there's Paolo, you were saying to like Eurovision, you have to like pop music. In a way, yes, you have to go in with an open-mindedness that if you're a pop lover, you would. But I don't think that's completely true, because there are a lot of different genres going on. And even within pop, there are phases, obviously, from now, there is a kind of electro-ness, and I'm sure trap will be coming to Eurovision sometime soon. Yeah, it hasn't gone very, very hip-hoppy. There's been a few kind of funky pop songs, so it'll be interesting to see if that changes in the next few years. But I think people should just see it as a general music competition. And if you do, you might be pleasantly surprised. Well, hopefully we have made you a bit more of a Eurovision fan today. And thank you very much, Paulo, for coming on. And I hope this hasn't made you disown me.
The opposite.
Oh, lovely. Fran, anything to add?
Just, keep being you guys. Love Europe, love music. Stay safe.
Amazing. Bye.
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 Well, we hope you enjoyed this two-parter with Paulo Mendes-Jorge, my beloved father. We're going to keep talking about Eurovision while it's still happening. So the next episode that's coming out, Fran and I are going to be looking at our top overrated and underrated choices for this year specifically, 2021. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, keep tuned. And if you're sick of us talking about Eurovision and want us to talk about something else, or you have any other suggestions or feedback, you can get in touch with us. It's OU Music Pod on Twitter, at Overunderrated Music Pod on Instagram, or you can email us overunderratedmusicpod@gmail.com. Enjoy Eurovision, have a good time, stay safe out there. Peace out.